this episode of the Business Communicators.
I'm always fascinated that what we do is at the heart of any industry.
You're listening to the Business Communicators.
Welcome to the Business Communicators, the number one podcast for communications and marketing professionals in the world, and that's a verifiable fact. Thomas, we had an interesting episode last week. It did well. I think in metrics, it was one of our top 10 episodes by ratings for over a 7-day period. So kudos to us on that. And something else, we were temporarily suspended for community guidelines violation on TikTok after the video had received close to like 30,000 views.
30,000 views. And I think that's something that we also need to remind our audience is while we are business focused, and LinkedIn is probably the most business driven of our social media platforms, we do go across all social media platforms, knowing where our audience was, and unfortunately TikTok, Instagram is where a lot of the stories do end up breaking, and Twitter, as we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me, and I do this on another podcast as well, is, we'll occasionally post clips and we'll put them on Instagram, we'll put them on, TikTok, we'll put them on YouTube as clips, LinkedIn, of course, and it's really interesting to see what does well on which platform. Some will do incredibly poor on LinkedIn, but, do absolutely incredible numbers on TikTok and vice versa. So it's really interesting to see what plays well and what gets caught by the algorithm. But we received a community guidelines violation for, quote, harassment and bullying. The notice said users should feel safe to express themselves without fear of being shamed, humiliated, bullied, or harassed. We deeply understand the psychological distress that abusive content can have on individuals. I don't think anything could be classified as bullying, so I appealed it. And of course, the content was restored. It said, "Thank you for submitting your appeal. We have reviewed and restored your content. We apologize for any inconvenience this may have caused." So I don't want to speculate, but I do want to speculate. I'm guessing someone affiliated with one of the groups that we talked about last week probably filed a complaint.
Well, and also knowing that the CMO of the company we were talking about that had the major spike in things by attributing themselves to false reporting has parted ways. So I'm wondering if it was one of the three companies that we did talk about throughout the whole thing. But
yeah, if I had to guess, that would be it. Interestingly enough, Ken actually posted an update video, I think on Thursday, explaining that he had separated with the company. And he said that he learned a lot about the ethics of the situation. So I'm curious if he listened and, because I think we were very fair with the conversation last week, discussing it from an ethical side, from a business side. I think we handled the discussion quite well.
Absolutely. And, you asked me about partnerships and advertising with the ethics on there and how ethically we're trying to get with things that are moving the needle. So sponsors, if you're hearing that, how many views we got on TikTok, but self-promotion aside, it wasn't the fact that he was saying that this is a false story or a parody story or a story. It was, we're attaching it to news, even though it wasn't news. And so I said, ethically, if it was said, hey, yes, this is false, sponsor, more power to you. Charading, no, not good. Even though that, with that being said, I probably would never have consulted with any of the brands or companies that I work with or have worked with in the past to sponsor that particular episode, just because it is so heart-wrenching and gut-wrenching.
Well, that would have been tough too. Like, had we gone to a PR agency or a marketing firm here in Houston and said, "Hey, look, we anticipate this episode is going to be really, really well. Would you like to sponsor this episode?" That would have been questionable on our side.
Absolutely.
And if the agency had agreed to it, that would have been questionable on their side as well. Most companies, they're competitive, right?
Mm-hmm.
They want to win business,
mm-hmm.
but they don't want to tear people down in the way. So curious case study for us, I guess.
Absolutely. And I think it's also interesting, what's taking place with the alcohol industry, seeing how the big competitors against InBev, Anheuser-Busch, competing against Miller Coors and those kind of things, who have competing products, competing things like that. I would love to be a fly on the wall with their distributors who are selling them into it to say, they doing the negative recruiting as we are hitting college football, college basketball recruitment times of, you don't want to sign with them because of XYZ, or, hey, it's unfortunate what happened to them, but here's why you should buy our product and listen to the benefits, which I always lean towards the latter.
Yeah. Well, speaking of advertising, there was some news that broke on Thursday as Elon Musk tweeted out that he had found a new CEO for Twitter, or X, his new company name, and that, quote, she will be starting in about 6 weeks. And news shortly broke after that that person is actually, I hope I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. I haven't listened to a pronunciation yet, but Linda Yaccarino. If you're not familiar with her, she is currently a advertising executive at NBC Universal, I guess former advertising executive at NBC Universal, but she's got a really impressive background. I think she spent decades in a variety of leadership positions with NBC, working with brands. I believe the Olympics with their digital arm Peacock. So she's got quite the reputation. And I guess she actually interviewed Elon Musk about a month ago at a major advertising conference in April, which, if you haven't seen the video yet, it's a really interesting conversation between both of them. And she talks about, kind of influencers and, kind of influencing. And Elon talks about, the need to keep free speech. And from what we understand, I'm sure there'll, probably be more to come out over the coming weeks, but Elon's going to move into a, software and tech developer type role. And she's going to really be, I guess, focus on running the business side of things. And I think a large part of her duty will be to bring back, some advertisers that have left the platform. And I'm not sure how much time you spend on Twitter. I spend quite a lot of time on it. It's probably my favorite app that's out there. There were a lot of people that were pessimistic about Elon taking over Twitter, and people saying that, it's not going to last until the end of 2022. It's going to be, shut off by then. I told people, give it time, give it a year, and see what happens. I still stand firm with that. I think we are starting to see changes within Twitter. I don't want to talk about, the Twitter blue or, the quote unquote hate speech. I think part of the problem that we've seen is it's, people complaining about Twitter are the ones that just don't like Elon Musk. And I think that's, kind of problematic. I think for me, the platform is still incredibly useful, to gather news, to understand news, to follow news as it happens. They're going over some tech upgrades. I believe they're almost trying to make Twitter as like, a news platform, but also as a competitor to WhatsApp, which is kind of what I'm gathering. It looks like they're going to bring live video back as a potential option as well. So I think there's still a lot of room for growth with Twitter, think I'm excited about this.
You're missing one of the biggest points of it all. First biggest point is you texted the new CEO last night. New York Times broke it an hour ago through my news feeds. But also, they went out and signed Fox personality Tucker Carlson.
Well, so that's really interesting. So Twitter did not sign Tucker.
Okay.
Elon actually posted a tweet about it saying we did not pay him a dime. That's a really interesting thing that we actually hadn't discussed much on this show, but Tucker Carlson, if you're not familiar, we know that we have a lot of listeners that are outside of the US. He is a big news personality. He had the primetime slot on Fox News. His Tucker Carlson show was the highest rated evening news program, cable news program for years. It wasn't even close, really. I mean, he was blowing his competition out of the water, and he was let go. A lot of people speculate that it was because of the Dominion settlement, which Thomas and I discussed, I believe, 2 episodes ago.
Yes.
But Tucker had a non-compete clause, so there was a lot of speculation. Where will he go next? Will he go to OAN? Will he go to Newsmax? Will he start his own company? And I think we were under the thought that there was no way he was going to work for anyone else. He's too big of a name, too big of an audience to go be an employer. That he was either going to launch his own platform, or he was going to buy, a smaller network. Love him or hate him, I think he's the political version of Joe Rogan when it comes to audience size. He announced that he's going to be launching a new show that's going to air exclusively on Twitter. So his first few videos about that have had millions of views within an hour time frame. I'm curious to see how this works for him, how it works with advertisers, because he is a lightning rod. He is, toxic at times, and what companies are going to want to run ads beside him during the live stream. So I'm curious to see how, from a revenue perspective, it works for him. And if Twitter does something, because I know Elon has talked about this, of making Twitter a home for content creators, views, likes, is there going to be some sort of like revenue sharing? It's going to be fascinating.
There has to be some sort of revenue sharing, and to put some numbers behind that, his non-compete was $25 million.
Yeah.
So that basically means that Fox was generating $25 million ish of revenue from his time slot, for lack of a better statement, and understanding that revenue would go away if he started someplace else. It's interesting. I didn't know that Elon said that, no, he's not on Twitter, even though all the platforms and all the news stations were saying that this is there.
He is on Twitter,
yeah.
but Twitter did not recruit him.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, to your point, love him, hate him, he does have some decent points about his example of saying, I'm launching something back. The contract of the non-compete is gone, about honesty and reporting all the way through. And the example he uses is just as biased as the biases he's talking about through there. And it just takes a different lens to kind of look at of what the reporters are trying to do. But yeah, I think Elon is making the right moves for Twitter to succeed. With Elon understanding that, you know what, the business side of this is not my strong suit. I need to step out of the way. I have consulted with a couple of people startups or sole proprietors who are starting to hire people, and they're just burnt out. And I'm like, unfortunately, as you get to some point, you stop doing what it is you love to do, whether that's ad buying, or whether that's being the financial advisor for different companies, or whether that is buying and selling of stocks and bonds, being a financial trader, or buying and selling shirts, a company there. It takes a mentality to say, I need to step back and hire a marketing person. I need to step back and hire an operations person. I need to step back and hire a CEO, and understand that what they say is going to be there. I'm intrigued to see if Elon will listen to her 100% of the time.
That's a big thing, because he owns the company.
Yeah.
But I think if you look at what he's done in the past with Tesla and SpaceX, particularly SpaceX, he hired a CEO, and she's done an incredible job with the company. And there's a reason why, they're at the forefront of, space. Prior to SpaceX, the United States government, to put up satellites in the air, was, relying on the Soyuz and the Russians. And now SpaceX, I swear they have a launch like every other day, putting stuff up.
Well, that might stop, because if you see what the government stepping in saying, that last launch that had a rapid deconstruction.
That was a different rocket. But the one that they launch like every 2 days, that one's not going to slow down. The rocket that you're referring to, that was a test, obviously, but that is, in theory, going to take humankind to Mars,
to the moon, to Mars. But I was going to say, I think after that rapid thing, it came out that some of their flight plans are going over protected wetlands in Texas. And so they have to come through and do more. So that's why I said, even if it's the ones who aren't blowing up 4 minutes after launch, you still have to follow some sort of government on there. But you forgot the big one that Elon was also part of, was PayPal. So that's really how he made his money as an investor. So I think he's found the secret sauce of company startups. We talk about the secret sauce of social media and going viral. And we've talked about all sorts of things. So if you get that algorithm just right, you learn a way to do it. You see influencers crying because nobody's taking their free grocery bill when they're trying to do it for promotions. On that note, Mr. Beast, I want to talk about him because he got one of his going viral things stopped by, was it TikTok or Instagram? Which one was it?
Instagram, yeah. He gained 23 million followers within like a 48-hour time span, something like that.
And he was doing it by a competition of, I'm giving away $100,000 to 10 people, or 10 people to $10,000 each to hit $100,000. And they stopped it. Which I know in our backdoor channels, I was like, isn't that the same of just buying followers? Because those people aren't going to be active on your network for the most part.
I think they will. I mean, you look at his YouTube channel. I mean, it's got over 100 million subscribers. His views and posts do incredible numbers. You know, he has such a large influence on, let's call it the Gen Z and younger generation. You know, apparently, he was offered several $1 billion for all of his content and turned it down. You know, he is building a massive brand. You know, there's a lot of creators that are doing that. You know, you've got Emma Chamberlain with her coffee, Logan Paul and KSI with Prime. You've got Mr. Beast, also his name's Jimmy Donaldson, but you know, with his Mr. Beast burgers and then his Feastables, I think they're chocolate bars, I think. But it's really interesting to see how these content creators have like pivoted, you know, to build a brand outside of these platforms, and it seems to be working. You know, Prime, for example, I think has been valued at like $500 million. It's the number 3 sports drink in the world right now. They've got partnerships with Arsenal. They've got partnerships with the Los Angeles Dodgers, the UFC. I mean, all within a year and a half. It's quite insane.
Dude Perfect's another one that comes to mind.
They were the original, yeah.
But I think what rubs me the wrong way about Mr. Beast's last promotion was you had to follow him, then you had to get somebody else to follow him, and then you had to post that you're following him.
But that's no different than every other. Okay, so my fiance Katie, she's on Instagram and she enters like so many Instagram contests all the time, and there are a lot of we'll call them like fashion bloggers that post. They do this stuff all the time, so it's no different than them. But I do agree, you know, I want to separate the two because Mr. Beast is trying to grow his own brand. He's not going to go to like somebody and say, hey, look, I have now 40 million people. Do you want me to post something on Twitter? Like, he's not going to do that. He's wanting to push his own brand out there. The problem that I have, as we've discussed many times, is there are fashion and beauty influencers that are buying followers and, in my opinion, committing fraud, you know, with these brand partnerships that they're signing up on. And you go and actually look at, you know, some of their sponsored posts, and they have, I don't know, 200,000, 500,000 followers, and they'll post a photo or a video, and of course their likes are hidden, so you can't see those now, but you can actually like manually click and kind of scroll to see how many likes they have. And you know, they have anywhere between 50 to 100 likes, you know, maybe 5 comments. It's like, if you have 250,000 followers, you should be doing a lot better on post. So are these bots? You know, what's going on? It's, you know, if your engagement rate is below 3% on Instagram and you're trying to be an influencer, brand shouldn't work with you.
I don't disagree with you on that one. And yes, while Mr. Beast and a lot of them are starting to build their own brand, merch, etc. from there, I do think that some of those followers, when Mr. Beast was starting off, or funding came from collabs or collaborations.
He does a lot of those collabs, but most of them are on his YouTube channel. I think StubHub has been a big partner for him. Yeah, there's some other big brands.
But again, it doesn't really matter. What I'm saying is if I turn around and say, hey, China, get me 100,000 followers, because, you know, we've talked about it. Like us, follow us on all of the social media, because that's how it tells us what we're doing is working.
Yeah, it's kind of frustrating sometimes. When we have like a really good episode, whether it's on this show or it's on, another podcast that I host. I love it when people like give us feedback. I'll have
Absolutely.
people like DM, I'll have people text me, and I'm like, actually, can you go and engage and put that on the post itself? So more people see it. Like, help us out. So if you like any of the content we're doing, feel free to text us. That's fine if you have our numbers. But
I was going to
awesome.
say, I also love it when I'm out and about at an event, whether it's a marketing event or a communications event or just something random. And somebody's come up, hey, I heard your podcast on this. And it's like one from like 2 years
Yeah,
ago.
it's cool.
And you're like, thank you. I don't
It
really
is
remember saying
fun to
that,
go
but
back.
sure.
Yeah, it is fun to go back and look at the archives and see which posts are doing well on which week. And that was one of the interesting things about our post on TikTok that did really well. There were people that were commenting early on because I think within the first hour that we posted the video, it had 200-300 views maybe. And there were people that were commenting on it, really enjoyed this interview and conversation, commenting to help boost the algorithm. And so they understood the assignment and they delivered. So the TikTok generation gets it. Leave a comment, leave a like, share, and that helps the algorithm.
But it's interesting you were saying about TikTok or Mr. Beast and having younger followers. We talked to ethics last one, and we talk ethics a lot on here, and that's probably one of the things that's actually hurting, not necessarily hurting, but at the end of the night, we can go to bed good is because you, I, Hattie, Kim all have super high ethics standards on there. So we're not going out and buying followers. We're not saying launching a thing to say, hey, follow us and do this. Where other podcast people have. I think that part of it is we talk about being the number one podcast, and so many times we'll have a conversation. It will get published that Monday, and usually by Thursday, you start to see people talking about exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah,
and I'm like, if they're not following us or listening to us, somebody's tipping them off. And reach out to us, and we have lots of experience all the way through on beating the algorithms in LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok. But going back to the statement about ethics is I think the AdFed has ethics standards that if you're under 13, you're not supposed to be advertising. I think there's also legality issues to it, that if you know you're advertising to kids, you're not supposed to do that. You can thinly veil it as advertising to their parents. As I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old in my household, that we can go from there.
Well, speaking of ethics, I do want to bring this up to you because for those, again, not familiar, if you don't live in the United States, I think it was Wednesday of this past week, CNN hosted a town hall. They called it a Republican town hall. There was only one Republican that was there. It was featuring former President Donald Trump, and he was interviewed, I believe, for probably about 2 hours by Caitlin Collins. She is political correspondent with the network.
Mm-hmm.
And more than 3 million people tuned in to the town hall on Wednesday night. According to early Nielsen data, it was a 300% increase from a typical weeknight at 8 p.m. So, the programming did incredibly well. But of course, there's some risk. Is it good to have a former president on your network? Absolutely. If that president is Donald Trump, is it good to have that president on your network? It's going to draw ratings. It's going to draw eyeballs. But again, it goes down to the ethics. He was, he's very controversial in some of his claims that aren't verified. He spoke specifically on E. Jean Carroll, the woman who a day prior won a civil lawsuit in New York. I believe he was ordered to pay like $5 million for defamation.
Mm-hmm.
He spoke negatively toward her. And apparently now she's exploring another follow-up defamation suit. So to me, it's interesting because a few weeks ago, CNN fired Don Lemon, who had been, one of their prime voices for many years. And they fired him for alleged misogynistic comments. And then a few weeks later, they bring Trump on for almost the exact same thing and then gloat about the ratings. Apparently hasn't sit well with a lot of on-air talent at CNN. some of these individuals are remaining anonymous, but according to a quote from The Hill, it says it was a total debacle, and I've never been more ashamed to work at CNN. One prominent on-air talent at the network told The Hill on Thursday. I don't think anyone came out looking good. This is entirely a corporate and management failure. They should have anticipated how out of control Trump would be. To think he was going to act more presidential in that kind of setting is just naivete on a galactic scale. I don't know who said that. It was an anonymous quote, but it's interesting, because obviously CNN finds themselves in a situation with Tucker Carlson out of Fox News that they can, maybe try to level up the playing field, win some of those advertisers. But is this the right move for them?
Depending on what you're trying to accomplish, we talk about setting your goals, and if they're trying to just get eyeballs on their TV, having a former president, even if it is one that has a tendency to create his own truths, for lack of a better statement, is a good play. With that being said, going back to the ethics statement, I don't know. But if they're trying to be truly hard-hitting journalists, and this is as a potential presidential candidate again, well, he is, then it is good for them to try to say, okay, here are the hard questions, and not just softball them all the way through. There's a book called Factfulness, 10 Reasons Why Your World is Kind of Skewed. And it talks about, if you think the media is biased, you're right, because they are pandering to the people who are watching them. I think one of the studies came 100%. Out about Fox News. While it does slant right, most of their viewers are the far left, because they're like, what are they going to say next? What can I try to hang them over for? And they know this. So how can they continue to do those things? And we've talked about it. Don't use one news source. Don't use one media source.
100%. Read multiple. That's
get a full perspective of it all. I'd like to think in my rose-colored glasses that, yes, they're fair and balanced. They actually reach out to the other side to get their take on it. Now it's up to the other side whether they make a comment or don't make a comment. That's where, my naivete, and I'm going to believe that probably until the day I die, is that, yes, all the news stations, all the big four networks try to practice fair and balanced news reporting. And that's probably why I like 60 Minutes the best.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a few things to know here. One, a lot of people complain, like, how did Trump get elected in 2016? It was because of these appearances on CNN and Fox. They were giving him a platform. So he didn't have to spend as much on advertising when he was on CNN and Fox every night of the week.
Absolutely.
So if you don't like him, don't put him on your platform. It's as simple as that. Kind of circling back to a similar point with the Linda Yaccarino news to Twitter. Of course, Axios covered it very fairly. They talked about her ties to the World Economic Forum, her leadership position, her ties to the Olympics, and the work that she's done there. Vox, on the other hand, which is a left-leaning outlet, said that she's a known Republican, and that should be a red flag. And that she served on, I think, a committee in the Trump administration. I think she was on like a sports and nutrition council. And she's been criticized by people on the right for praising diversity in the workforce. So it's, the fact that Vox brought up that she's a Republican is obscene to me. Like, that's irrelevant to the story. Focus on her record. Nobody was complaining about her when she was an executive at NBC. It's problematic to me when people try to create this narrative that isn't there just so they can please their audience. I don't know.
I agree. And, we started off this episode about us getting banned for our episode on TikTok and things along those lines. My question really comes into play, whether she's at the helm, whether Elon's at the helm of Twitter, is the checks and balances on the known false, that they're only there to incite a riot. They're only there to incite a division. They're taking something and blowing it out of context. While we do live in a free speech country, we still don't have the right to be able to yell fire in a crowded movie theater, because it does incite.
Thomas, movie theaters aren't crowded anymore. You should know this.
Well, actually, if you truly see the revenue coming in from like Avatar: Way of the Water, but it's the same concept. Is the whole purpose and the whole example of that was you're saying it to incite a reaction that's not true. The microphones have gotten bigger. The audiences have gotten bigger. The consequences are getting bigger.
Yeah.
And so checks and balances have to be in place. You can't just let anybody there with it. We talked to ISIS. They were using, what was it, Twitter to recruit?
Twitter, what's up? Yeah.
And reality is the one social media platform that I'm probably the most in tune with right now is Reddit. Whether you call it social media or not, it's irrelevant.
I love Reddit.
I do too.
Love it.
That's actually where I spend most of my time, and that's where I get most of my breaking news from. Is because it's almost like Reddit, and then a millisecond later is Twitter.
No, Twitter's way ahead of Reddit. There's a reason why half the time you send stuff in the group thread, I'm like, yep, already seen it.
Well,
Hattie's the worst. Hattie, I love Hattie. Hattie is the worst though. Sometimes she'll like send us stuff that's like 2 days old. It's like, yep, saw it.
Well, and it's funny because I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The four of us probably consume more media than most people outside of journalists do. And a lot of our stories do overlap. Some of our media consumptions do overlap. And I make no bones about which programs I watch, which newsletters I subscribe to, which on that note, check mark, time to go through and unsubscribe to all of these companies that I haven't talked to in 5 years, because if sales start slumping, let's send them an email every 10 days. And hey, we're really concerned about you during COVID.
Yeah. Speaking of newsletters, I don't want to spend much time on this, but I do want to bring it up real quick. So there's a newsletter out there. It's called The Published Press. It's by Colin and Samir. They've got a really interesting YouTube channel, podcast, and they focus like on, almost like reporting on tech and creators. So I guess Google announced this week some new AI tools. And this one to me is really interesting. So we're not going to spend a ton of time on it, but their newsletter writes, Google is testing a universal translator that redubs video in a new language while also syncing the speaker's lips to correspond to the new words. The tool is expected to launch on YouTube soon, which means recording in a new language or redubbing lines in post-production could become a thing of the past. So essentially, if this AI thing actually does work out, you could be listening to this conversation in Spanish, and it looks like Thomas and I, our lips are speaking Spanish. One of my favorite Netflix shows was Money Heist, and that was filmed in Spanish and it's dubbed in English. And it takes a few minutes to kind of get used to the dub, but if you could remove that with AI, that's insane.
But then what are college kids going to do sitting around their dorm room watching old dubbed over videos where the dub is like clearly not anywhere close to the lips?
Well, it's fascinating to me because going back to Mr. Beast, who you brought up a few moments ago, he's like he's I think the largest YouTube creator. He's got multiple channels where he will of course film everything in English, and then he hires voice actors for different languages. And so he's got like a channel with all of his videos in India. He's got a channel with all of his videos in Spanish. I think he's got a Korean one as well. So you can watch the exact same videos, and he actually hires like semi-popular names within those countries themselves, like actors. And so he's seen these videos that are several years old get millions and millions of more views, which means more AdSense revenue for him, which is just, it's massive. So, but all right.
I was about to say, so for our audience, since at one point in time we were the number 5 podcast in Egypt.
Yeah. Without being able to speak Arabic. Just imagine if we could.
Exactly. That's what was going through my head, is so all these other people who are listening to us, who can listen to us, because I know that we probably also get listened to some places through VPNs and other things where they're not allowed to.
Yeah.
But in their native language, I'm like sitting there and I'm like, oh, this could be fun.
Well, I know we are getting toward the end of the episode right now. We've got 34 minutes in, but we do have one of our co-hosts joining us now, back from a Houston Texans press conference. Kim Davis. It's been a while. How is everything over at NRG Stadium today?
It's good. It's the first day of it's rookie mini camp, right? So they have 2 days of that, and then we got a chance to talk to first year head coach D'Amico Ryans, and it's always interesting, guys, to find out what does the coach want these rookies to take away from mini camp, right? This is the very beginning, and over the years I've heard different things. Like, I just want them to know how to get around the building, and so for him, he said, "Yeah, Kim, that would be good." But the big thing is terminology, right? We talk about communication, and at the heart of everything that happens on that team is how they communicate with each other. And it starts with terminology, and that is where they start. He wants them to know how to communicate in the huddle, talk loud enough. I mean, I'm always fascinated that what we do is at the heart of any industry.
That's cool.
I was going to echo that. Just how much communications plays, and I think it's really cool. The video you saw, so we're gonna have to link to it or connect it into this of all the reporters waiting to get into the building.
Right. That was just it's interesting because hopefully they don't start 0-3. They start out, win a game or two, right? But it falls off. It's kind of like there's New Year's resolutions in the gym, and then like by Valentine's Day, the people are gone and it's just us regulars. So it was a pretty big crowd today for rookie mini camp, but it's the start of a new era. So we'll see.
Yeah, exciting times here in Houston. I don't know that we've been this excited about the Texans since, 2019, maybe. I mean, it's been
it's been
quite
a while.
some time. Yeah,
it's been a while.
I think interesting this week as well is the NFL schedule release. I don't know why this is like blown up, but the NFL, of course, owns Sunday, right? I think they want to own every other day of the year as well. So instead of just casually dropping an Excel document with the schedules, they build this up, and you listen to like sports talk radio, everyone's talking about it, and it's like, guys, it doesn't matter. Like, it's a schedule. Like, you know which teams are on it. Do the dates and the time really matter? Are you really going to dedicate these hours of content? But one of the things that I love about schedule release day is how the teams announce it. They are so creative in the different videos they do, and I don't know if you guys saw the Tennessee Titans on what they did, and I'll drop a link into the video. So if you're watching this right now or listening, you'll hear the comments.
St. Louis Rams.
Oh,
Lightning McQueen.
no.
It's a Pirates from the islands of the Caribbean. Texas. That's the Cowboys. Texas. Got that. Yeah.
There was like a TikTok trend several months ago where these people that obviously don't follow sports, they would show a sports logo, say, all right, can you name the team? And people obviously could not name the team or would give some like insane name. And so they went on Broadway Street in Nashville and did the same type thing, like to reveal their schedule. Like, they showed a logo and then had people try to guess what the logo was. And it was so funny watching it. A lot of people thought that the Indianapolis Colts logo was the Dallas Cowboys. And so everyone was like, oh, that's the Cowboys. Oh, that's the Cowboys. And the Titans on their TikTok post said, update, we are not playing the Dallas Cowboys this year. But it's so creative to see what the digital teams can do to have a little bit of fun with an otherwise bland announcement.
Well, and I was going to compliment. I think either a couple weeks ago, you and I, Austin, were talking about the NFL draft, how they turned it into a party and a media event, and I was like, isn't this the same as like Fashion Week for the fashionistas in New York City?
And Kim, you were covering the NFL draft. I mean, you've covered the NFL for quite some time. I mean,
right.
How have you seen it evolve? I mean, like Thomas said, it's an event now. It's a 3-day event.
Because everyone is looking for to build content, right? They build it, they sell it. It's a part of their brand. And so the NFL draft, for now that it moves around the country, you'll notice, other than last year in Vegas, it goes to cities that won't be able to host a Super Bowl, primarily because of weather, right? So you're never going to see the draft in Houston because
Buffalo.
They have a dome, or but the draft could go to Buffalo because the Super Bowl will not. So it's a huge event. It's a chance. Look, the NFL has. I worked for the NFL for a couple of years, and for the Super Bowl, and they are probably one of the best at protecting their brand, but also activating it. And they are always looking at, how do we activate our brand? How do we try to find or engage more of our audience? I don't think they do that well. That's a whole nother show. I think they miss it when they talk about, we're being more diverse and inclusive. I don't see that. But they are always looking at how they can make more money. Let's say that. And so that is a big show. The draft, I mean, the schedule release, it's now a live primetime show on the NFL Network, and SportsCenter does a special schedule show. I mean, this wasn't the case 10 years ago, much less
Yeah.
when I started. So all of these things, because of the power of media, and I mean media from a content standpoint and a revenue piece, anything they can get their hands on to sell, they're going to turn it into a show.
Yeah.
I did want to get your take, Kim, because since you cover sports a lot, is the rumors that are going around right now about the NHL going to Houston, whether it's from Arizona or something like that. Are you following that, or are you worried that that's going to be more work on your back end?
No, it's not more work. I am following it. We've heard it before. When Tillman Fertitta first bought the Rockets, he talked about it and how it would just make sense for that to be for a team to be here. I don't know. What I hear from him, right? Of course, he made a bid to try to get in on the Washington team.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so I don't know that he wants all three, or that he, really has the kind of finances to get all three. But that's been around before. So I am following it. I don't know until I really hear like about ownership. That's when I start to say, okay, this is feasible, because that's really key. Is ownership going to move? Are they going to get new ownership, or how's that going to work? So don't know much more than that.
You talk ownership, and I always think of the Red McCombs and the Vikings moving to San Antonio, San Marcos, Austin area. That never transpired.
Isn't that why the Alamo Dome was built? Because they were trying to attract the team?
That was one of the reasons.
One of the reasons, yeah. One of the reasons.
By the city.
It's
because
wild.
he's from that area. He lives in San Antonio, Austin. I don't remember exactly where he lives anymore, but he lived in that area.
I think he just passed away within the last year.
I think so too.
Yeah,
so it's interesting you said about the ownership, and you already talked money, and Tillman is not is a smart man, and when the Toyota Center doesn't have anybody in there, he's not making money, and the NBA is not playing 365 games a year there. So
right. Well, I'll tell you, funny. So they of course rent their stadiums off for so many other things. So today there's over at NRG, so we're at practice and then we go in the stadium. But we had to be in the auditorium when the team has meetings, and we had to get out right away because you've got graduations, but more importantly, you've got a concert tonight, right? And so you've got the Ed Sheeran people there, and we were in the way. So they are finding other ways to make money off of those venues. And when they have them rented out for other events, that is what's most important. So it's always about what they say about the Benjamins.
Yeah,
don't think about it's the money. No, it's about the money.
No, it's about the money, right?
Well, I know we're getting toward the end of the episode, and it was fun to have Kim, hop on and chat with us. We'll try to get everyone together for a full episode with everyone soon. But I guess just want to wrap things up with kind of closing marks, your takeaways for the week. What one thing should people be watching for? So Kim, I'm gonna start with you. What's your takeaway for the week, or your lasting message, I guess, to our audience this week?
For me, being a journalist, one of my takeaways was my disappointment with the CNN broadcast.
We spoke about that before.
I'm sure you did.
We did about what were they trying to accomplish, and
what were they trying to accomplish?
Not?
So I think it probably was successful for what they were trying to accomplish. I don't think it's successful for journalism. And so what I want people to pay attention to is journalists have to get back to being journalists, right? Yep. You can talk about that people should vote, because I do on my sports show all the time. I never say who you should vote for, but you should vote. Voter activation, being engaged, knowing what's happening in your communities. I'm for that all day long, but I'm not for putting up a rally and pretending it's a town hall meeting. That was very disappointing to me. And then they hung out their anchor host, right? They didn't put her in the best position. And from the very first question she asked, I'm like, well, what kind of question is that? So anyway, for me, my big takeaway is, are we doing 2016 again? Is this what we're doing? Because we should have learned something. And I was very disappointed, and I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's anything they could have done, to make this a town hall, it would have been to have Nikki Haley there. She's the only other major candidate that's announced that she's running for president on the Republican side. If you want to have equal platform, give equal time. Otherwise, you create 2016 again, like you just said, Kim.
Well, you don't stack the audience with MAGA Republicans.
Yeah.
You've got to have a more diverse audience if you're talking about, having real conversations. So that wasn't the goal. I think CNN management got what they wanted, but my understanding from even knowing some people that work for the network, they are people there are not happy. There are many
Yeah.
people that are not happy.
Yeah. Good takeaway. Good takeaway. Thomas, what about you?
My takeaway is going to be completely a little bit different. And Austin, I'm going to compliment you on this one. Is you sent over a creator, Casey Neistat. I've enjoyed watching his videos, and he talks about at start not monetizing. I had heard about him, but I never really followed him, anything like that. I actually sat down and watched his shows. So my takeaway for this week is, as we are wrapping up spring, moving in towards summer for the Northern Hemisphere, is to push away, do something different, learn something new. Take the time to read a book that you've been putting on the back burner, whether it's industry knowledge or not. Because at the end of the day, we are people, and it's what make us us, is to be able to talk about different industries, different topics, different philosophies, because we have different experiences. And so mine is, take time for yourself. We are going to hit the dog days of summer. And yes, there will always be a crisis blowing up. I think Austin's phone's blowing up. Mine has been blowing up from during the recording of this. And Kim, yours is probably going to start blowing up now that you're coming off of the press conference. So your phone is probably blowing up during the press conference or leading into it. So push away, take time for yourself, do something that's not 100% focused on your employer, your thing like that.
Find a passion
That's a good
project.
one. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. I guess mine is we're halfway through May right now, a third of the way through May, depending on when you're listening to this episode. It's Mental Health Awareness Month, so just want to encourage everyone to take care of yourselves. If you need to talk to somebody, talk to somebody. There's a lot of great resources out there. NAMI is a good resource as well. We've discussed mental health in this podcast a lot, so just go back to our archives and give that a listen. But take after yourself. Look after yourself. At the end of the day, you matter. Don't let anyone try to tell you otherwise. So that's my takeaway.
Hey, can I just drop in one thing to add to that?
Of course.
Remember the number 988. If you see somebody in crisis, call that number, because that's where they can get some help and resources. 988.
I love it. Kim, it was so great to have you join us.
Thank you. I was like, I gotta try to get on, so I was able to get here for the end.
It was fun. It was fun to see your video pop up, and I was like, oh, Kim's here, and I was trying to tell Thomas like, let's transition, let's bring Kim in. But we're glad that we got you on for a few minutes. But if you want to follow our work, just search @BizCommunicator on all the platforms. We're there, of course, thebusinesscommunicators.com. You can find us there as well. And I guess on behalf of my co-hosts this week, Thomas Bain, Kim Davis, my name's Austin Staton. See you next week. Take care, everyone.
You've been listening to the Business Communicators. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and leave us a 5-star review.